18th century criminal jargon for the fee given to a hangman. And the derivation's rather interesting. It's a chap's name, actually. In 1707, this chap was convicted of murder, and he tried to bribe the hangman to make it a fake, his demise. And it was an old trick, and it didn't come off. And he lost his money and his life, and his name was Timothy Selim.
Well, it's Australian coal, I think. Yes, Australian coal. They must use it sometimes. It's a costly Arab cloak, which they are well able to afford. And it's a hangman's fee. Henrietta.
I don't think I can believe the hangman. The Nina's coal sounds... Well, it's so technical that maybe it's right, but I'm going to have to believe it's yours because it sounds so useful for me to wear at the moment.
Which one are you choosing? You're choosing Frank's. You did say that. Yes,
it was absolutely word for word for what I said.
It's true, isn't it, Frank?
I'm afraid.
It is. It's a terribly English spelling for a word that means an Arab cloak, but perhaps that's why it fell out of use, who knows? But it's in the Oxford English Dictionary, nonetheless. Lowry is the next word, and it's Henrietta Tavistock's turn.
Well, this I enjoy describing to you because it's great fun to do. It's a veal custard. It's thin slices of veal, marinated and buried and cooked in a mixture of eggs and milk. And although it sounds disgusting, it really is quite delicious when you eat it. It was named after a man called Sir Thomas Lowry, who was an 18th century Lord Mayor of Bristol.
Yes. Knew what he liked. Patrick.
A Lowry is about 40 feet long, 6 feet wide, and it's got wheels under it. Right, may I proceed?
Yeah, got it so far. Yeah.
It's used for carrying things on it. But you can get a lot of things if it's 40 feet long, 6 feet wide, with wheels underneath it.
Rhubarb.
Or chaps.
Tons of stuff, yes.
Eels.
It travels on American railways. Used for carrying imperishable goods like old senators and chewing gum, unsold motor cars. That's a Lowry.
Right, if you say so. Governor. Arthur.
No. Not an American word at all. It's an Australian word, as a matter of fact, called a Lowry. And it says, he whose company has a depressing effect upon others. It's a bit of a drag. Now, with Australian expletives deleted, the word might be used, for instance, in the following phrase: for Pete's sake, Bluey, give us a grin. Don't be such a bloomin' Lowry. Aussie.
Well, right. Well, according to Patrick, he made it sound like some tall chap with roller skates, but it's a railway truck, a long railway truck, veal custard, and a boring Australian, although that does seem a bit invidious, doesn't it? Nina?
Even though I love to cook, I must say I've never come across this veal dish before. That means I know everything about cooking, but I don't think it's that. As far as Arthur's Australian drag, or whatever, I don't think it's that either. I'd rather like your 40 feet long vehicle for old senators. I'd go for that one.
Well, it certainly is dull enough, isn't it, Patrick? You'll be the first to admit. True or bluff?
Oh, yeah, Patrick, the scores are
come
neck
on,
and
Patrick.
neck.
They're anxious.
Dull,
They're anxious.
but true.
Railway trucks on this programme are always true, except when they're not. Now, here we have what I suspect will be our last word, seagoon. That sounds like... Well, I'll leave it to you. Frank.
Unhappily, Sagoon. It's Red Indian currency. Wait, no, you shook your head. You want me to go on? It's
a little, about an inch more.
Algonquin tribes of North Brunswick in Canada used it, and it was sort of pebbles, really, sort of polished into circles and triangles and squares. I know it's very, very silly bluff, and I wish I hadn't said it.
That's chancing your arm. Who knows? Barry, your turn.
A segoon is one of the classic parries in swordplay, one of the 8 recognised methods of defence, warding off a cut or thrust, and it's one which, thanks to the miracle of television, I am able to show you. It's suppose for one moment that this pencil is a sword, by deflecting it from the horizontal by about 30 degrees, like that in front of me, but being always sure that the thumbnail is uppermost. That's a segoon.
Nina.
Segoon, so pronounced because it's a vegetable seaweed, and it's found growing on boulders and rocks around Britain's shores. You can eat it, it's quite delicious. It's called poor man's lettuce in Northumbria. And in Wales, they use it also for manuring the soil.
Well, it's pebbles used as a form of currency in India. Whether now or then, I'm not too clear. It's kind of seaweed, and it's a parry at swordplay. Patrick?
Because any mention of Northumbria means it's a pitiful attempt at deceiving us. No, if we are in a hurry, without doubt, it's this kind of poor Frank trying to conceal the fact that it's an Indian pebble used as currency.
Well, let's see. True or bluff, Fred? Let's have it.
Nothing.
We've just got nice time. We have nice time, I am informed, to hear what the true definition was. Here it goes. Stunning.
Well done, well done.
Another one. One more.
I'm afraid
One
you
more
can't
word,
have it.
please.
You can't have it, mate. I should repeat that it is a parry, it was second. Yeah, I think it's a bowdlerisation, not a bowdlerisation, but a distortion of the French. Haha. Yeah. I don't often get a chance to say much on this programme. I thought I'd say that. Anyway, the score standing at 4-3. I declare that it's quite evident that Patrick Campbell's team has won.
Just.
Enough.
Why don't you clap? Very popular win, yes. Another trip to the haunted wing of the Oxford English Dictionary next time. Until when, goodbye from Barry Foster, Arthur Lowe, Nina, Henrietta Tavistock, Frank Muir,
Goodbye.
Patrick Campbell, and goodbye. As you know, this is called My Bluff, the literary version of Cowboys and Indians, where the chief Red Indian, well, reddish, is Patrick Campbell.
Good evening. And my first guest is a lion tamer, or rather, a lion tameress. She's the mistress of Woburn Abbey, the Marchioness of Tavistock. And my other one is simultaneously Mr. Micawber and Captain Mannering, but really Arthur Lowe.
Well, I advise you to believe about 30% of anything that drops from the lips of Frank Muir.
back we come with my two guests from the world of movies and international cabaret, the beautiful Nina. And from the world of motion pictures and plays and television drama, the beautiful Barry Foster.
It's only this bell that really matters, you know that. And it produces a good word, as ever, catapult in this case, and you'll recall that Patrick Campbell and his team will define catapult 3 different ways. 2 are false, 1 is true. That's the one that Frank Muir and his pair will be seeking. Patrick, what about the word?
Because it's pronounced catagood.
What, with a P?
It's pronounced catagood. It's a Himalayan word. Not Himalayan, but Himalayan. It's a Himalayan ibex, or ibex to you, ignorant lot. It bounds around the Himalayas just like the chamois around about the Matterhorn. If you should come upon a wounded catagood,
Heaven forfend,
and you pluck from its underbelly some of its wool, you can make a balaclava for a Sherpa or a shawl for the Sherpa's wife.
Love the way you pronounce the glottal stop. We haven't had many of them, you know, really recently. Arthur Lowe.
Catapult. I too am a little worried about this being perhaps a bit academic for our opponents. It, in fact, comes from the Hebrew, the written form of Hebrew. And it's a sign in the form of 2 vertical dots, which, if placed under a consonant, indicate that there is no following vowel. Catapult. It comes in 2 varieties, as a matter of fact. There's a compound catapult and a movable catapult.
oh, goody.
Now, if you catapult your answer, you'll probably be wrong.
It's rather marvellous to think of 2 vertical dots. However, now it's Henrietta's turn.
Well, a catapult is a small, fiendish medical instrument. It's long and narrow, and through the hollow tube that runs through it can be poured liquid ointment, or you can even squirt it through in order to cleanse or irrigate a wound. Now, nurses and doctors can also use this off-duty, but then they use it as a pea shooter.
Would you like to? Well, it's a Hebrew linguistic sign involving vertical dots, you know, that great help to geographers, or rather geometers, that. A wild goat and a medical thingy. Frank?
Oh, no problem. We're having a little discussion here about the weather. And
What to do
like
tomorrow?
that. We're not at all dismayed. 3 down. Well, Paddy's Himalayan all-purpose animal.
Himalayan.
Himalayan, bounding from peak to peak. I'll hold that. Now, this written Hebrew with a sort of vertical umlaut.
2 dots.
Very interesting, very interesting. No, I'll hold that. The pea shooter that makes a noise, very interesting. Well, I think that it is Paddy's... No, it isn't. It's yours.
Who's you?
It's a pea shooter.
Well, she said it was...
It's Henrietta's pea shooter, medical pea shooter.
Yeah, well, she said it was, yeah, you clean a wound with it, and you can blow things through it. True or bluff?
Pea shooter?
Well done, Frank. It's true. The only thing in doubt about that was whether they do really use it as pea shooter, but I suppose the more light-hearted might. Cocoon, Frank.
Would you believe... No, come on. I'm asking you. Would you believe an obsolete 16th or 17th century Moroccan coin, copper, about 2 inches in diameter, and 16 of them make up in Moroccan monetary value an asper.
An asper?
Yes.
And go.
Well, I worked at it hard.
You did. You beveled the edges there, Frank. Harry, your turn.
We're in for a Himalayan evening, because this is a Kashmiri word, cocoon. It's what they call that bout of sickness, of vertigo, which people get, usually newcomers, in the high passes. And there's nothing to be done about it. You get fits of breathlessness and bouts of nausea, and it can be assuaged, the discomforts of it, by sniffing at camphorated oil.
If you happen to have it about you. Nina.
Our cocoon is sort of roughly in shape and size about like a safety matchbox. And it comes from a climbing tropical plant called, its real technical name is Entada scandens. Entada scandens. With a slight Danish accent. And you can eat it, it's edible, but barely. You have to boil it very long. It's mainly used for making objet d'art. When you dry it, you can make little snuff boxes or scent bottles out of it. A cocoon.
Splendid. It's a Moroccan coin. So many of them make us something else, an asper. It's mountain sickness, and it's a bean. Patrick.
Poker faces.
Dear.
Don't let him read your eyes.
I think people having camphorated oil up the mouth because they've been taken ill seems to be improbable. Oh. Where's bean with beans? Cocoon sounds too like a bean. On the other hand, I believe it to be, without doubt, and my team have been consulted, and we believe with me that it's a coin.
The coin of which Frank Muir spoke so lengthily. True, Frank, or bluff?
If you have flung the gauntlet down.
Let's see it, lad.
Very well. I will.
It's true.
Nothing whatever to do with a coin or an asper or anything like that. Who gave the two? Who spoke truthfully?
I did.
Little seed.
Mighty seed.
It's the bean, and she gave you the Latin name as well. A bean, that's what a cocoon is. Burga. Arthur Lowe.
Burga, yes, right. Alaskan.
Oh.
It's a violent wind carrying freezing sleet and sub-temperatures. Alaskans run for their lives when it comes. Rudyard Kipling mentioned it, as a matter of fact, and he said this about the Alaskans' attitude to the Burga. Ever they wait the winter's hate as the thundering Burga calls.
Boots, 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 boots. Tramping over the score.
Burga.
Well, shall we go on? Yes, I mean, yes. Henrietta, you'll go.
The burga is an Abyssinian banana that grows in Ethiopia, which is the same as Abyssinia.
That's better.
Yes, Abyssinian banana.
And in fact, one of the oldest jokes in the Abyssinian bumper fun book is about the man who throws down the burga skin as his mother-in-law is approaching him.
Why?
Oh, they're happy, laughing folk, that's why. Patrick.
A burga is a troop of a regular Turkish cavalry.
Oh, again.
They kind of marauding bands of Turkish cavalry. What got outlawed when Turkey changed the constitution in 1924?
In when?
1924. Make a note there, quick lad, before it goes away.
Yes.
Well, it's oh, you're going to say, oh,
I've
God,
hardly
bless you, sir.
started.
Please carry on. For about a week.
Not only were the burga outlawed, but also wearing of the fez. 1924, Turkish constitution, that's all, thank you.
Well, if they outlaw the fez and the burga, bang goes this program because they're full of it. But anyway, it's wind and sleet in Alaska. It's an Abyssinian banana grown, of course, in Ethiopia, and Turkish cavalry. Barry.
Well, versed as I am in the Kipling oeuvre, I don't think I've come across the Burger before. As for this incredible nonsense, in 1924 they were forbidden to wear the fez. One wonders what they're doing walking about wearing them now.
They're wicked.
No, it's got to be Henrietta with her banana skin joke.
Which
please.
grows in Ethiopia. She did say it. Now, is that true or bluff? Tell us, own up. Hey. No Abyssinian banana. Need to know the true definition, though. Can't go home without it. Yes, he's just holding you on the... Oh, how he strings it up. He's got it. Yes. It's a terrible gale of wind in Alaska. And now, at the score standing at 2-1, we have the word sping, and I think, Barry Foster, you're to kick off.
Yes. Spin is a verb. To spin is more or less the same, pretty well, as to ping. In other words, to make a loud hissing noise, like a mosquito or a bullet.
Or a Chinaman.
Fortunately, yes, fortunately, I have a quotation here, which is from a classic Edwardian boys' adventure story called Happy Hawkins. And here it is. The bullet tore through Dick's vest and spinged into the wall behind him. Now, do note that the past participle there is spinged, not spun or spun.
Yeah.
Yep.
Put
that down, yeah.
Yes. Nina.
A sping is an old golf term, and it's dating back to the days where people were sort of playing golf in deerstalkers and elastic-sided boots. And it was really a term used for a golf ball, which had been played with for quite a while and became, as it was made out of gutta percha in those days. Is that the right pronunciation?
Excellent, my dear.
Yeah.
Practiced. And it became sort of slightly pockmarked and flew rather unpredictably around. And it could also become ovoid. Dear, oh dear.
Right.
That's spring.
Centric golf ball.
Frank, what do you say?
Lovely definitions, those, and mine's very dreary. It's a kind of... sping is a kind of knife used in a profession. And it's in the clothing trade, or at least the making of cloth. And it's rather like... The end turns up, rather like a capital J lying on its side, or a sort of Eastern potentate's slipper, where the end comes up. And you used it for cutting the loops of fabric in the velvet trade, where the process was known as blossoming.
Oh, no. You're too pretty for words.
Well, that is the
Life
word. It
can
is to
be.
be believed. It's a curved knife for chopping away at things that he said. It's a pinging noise or a hissing noise. It's a misshapen golf ball. Arthur.
Worried.
Well.
Worried.
I don't know. It's a curved knife for cutting.
Thank you. I'll
No,
show
no,
you.
no, no. No, I don't think so, Frank. Sorry. Eccentric golf ball. No, I think it's Barry. I think it's Barry.
You think he made that noise? Well, but he said it was a noise, didn't you? Is it true or bluff, Barry?
He's
Let's
an
see.
Osman there, isn't he?
You've got it there, I'm sure. Ah, the way these actors string... Oh, dear, on the edge of our seats. Yes, yes. Ah. A sping is exactly what he said it is. It's the same as a ping, or thereabouts. 2-2. Get another word, scalmer, and it's Henrietta Tavistock, your turn.
Scalmer is an equine ailment. It's a disease in horses that makes it painful for them to neigh. It's a contagious disease of the larynx and the pharynx that was first noted in 1885. 1885 was the date it was noted, by a German vet called Wilhelm Dickenhoff, who had persuaded a horse to say ah, and therefore realized that there was something wrong with his larynx and his pharynx. Scalmer.
Yeah, right. Well, the horses are grateful anyway. Patrick.
The Scalmer, according to Roman mythology, were a race of one-eyed people who lived in and infested northeastern Europe. The strange thing about the Scalmer is that they appear endlessly on Roman vases, and they're always taking on, of all opponents, griffins. That's the Scalmer.
Yes, well,
Thank you.
Griffins would feel neglected otherwise.
We'll let you know.
Well, the next happens to be Arthur Lowe.
Yeah. A Scalmer is a black stone. In fact, it's a black stone which holds a fossilized shell. It's venerated by the Hindus. Now, one of the reasons why it's so venerated is because it's part of the Hindu faith to believe that it is not a stone containing a fossilized shell, but it is a petrified serpent, a holy petrified snake. And it's known as Gandaki to the Hindu.
It's known as a bluff to us.
On and off. It's a venerable Hindu stone. It's an ailment of horses, and it's a race of one-eyed men who appeared on jars. Nina.
Good Lord. I don't think it's your petrified snake, Arthur. I really don't. As far as this Northern European tribe, which you sort of pointedly spoke to me about, I don't really think it's that either. I rather like the horse's cough, even though I doubt whether that horse ever said ah.
The disease of the pharynx and the larynx, of which Henrietta spoke so feelingly. True or bluff?
Oh, don't say no. Every time you think it isn't a disease of horses, of course it is. Let's have another word, and it's Kishan. Well, I don't know how you say it, Nina. Kishan is tea from China, or rather it's a green tea which comes from the Linqiang province. And it is Kishan, dear, Kishan, means golden tongue. And the Chinese believed that when they drank this tea, they would sort of get be able the powers of persuasion from drinking a lot of that tea. It's very popular.
Right, now it's Frank Muir's turn.
It's sad. During the 18th century, farriers, I'm not very good on the R's, but F-U-R-R-I-E-R-S, fur makers and people who made beaver hats, used to treat the fur with nitrate of mercury, which a process known as Kishan. And the sad bit is that nitrate of mercury gets into you and affects your nervous system, hence the expression mad as hatters. But Kishan is the verb for applying nitrate of mercury to fur in order to felt it. Sad and perhaps a little boring, come to think of it.
Morbid, really.
Yes, really.
Now, Barry Foster, what do you say?
Kishan is a Manx measure, or if you're Danish, a measure from the Isle of Man, and a measure of capacity, that's to say. It's equal to, in our language, which some of us are versed in, 8 quarts. Now, before metrication comes in, let me hasten to say that therefore a Kishan is equal to 1 peck, 2 gallons, 16 pints, and 64 gills.
Well done. It's the treatment of fur. It's a kind of green tea, and it's 8 quarts as far as the Isle of Man's concerned. Henrietta.
A short pause for a quarter of an hour, please.
Let Henrietta do it. Don't impose your own views on the poor girl.
I don't think it's the Manx measure. No.
A shrewd judgment.
But I'm very upset by those two because I feel it could be both of them. But I'm going to plump for the tea.
Good. A plump at last. I was wondering if you were. You plumped for the tea of Nina.
Well, you really plopped in that cup, didn't you?
Oh. Let's quickly have the true definition, and then you never know, we might get another word in.
May as well.
It's there, you've got it about your person.
Not the actor again.
Yep. I thought I'd ring it a few times. You get the word rally. I think we ought to canter along fairly swiftly, Patrick.
Me hurry. A rally is a huge topsail used on schooners in the old days in the Great Lakes of America, a kind of huge spinnaker like topsail.
Lovely. When I say hurry, it's just the thought that counts. That's all. Arthur.
Do you want to begin again, then?
No, that's nice. Very distinct. Arthur.
If you were a Victorian tradesman who had to deliver something very heavy to a house, like a case of marsala, for instance, or enamel hip bath, something like that, you would carry it on a rally. And a rally is a flat-topped truck, sometimes drawn by a horse, or even horses.
Now, Henrietta, I think it's your turn.
Believe it or not, it's not only chickens that need grit. Hawks need it as well.
Who do?
Hawks. H-A-W-K.
Yes.
Hawks. Apparently hawks need it not to help them lay hard eggs like chickens do, but to help with their digestion. And this gritty gravel is known to falconers as rally.
So you claim it's grit for hawks.
Grit for hawks.
It's kind of a sail, as Patrick told us, and it's a long, flat, boring cart. Frank, what will you have?
Do you wish a long, flat, boring speech? Or
Not
how is
too,
the time?
No, I think, more or less swiftly.
Well, I'm not very good on things like hoist for topsail and spanker, this kind of thing. I don't understand sailing things, nor flat top, so it must be hawk grit.
Hawk grit.
Henrietta, yes,
true or
no.
bluff?
No, it's not.
Nay, nay. Let's have the true one. Let's have the true one. There it is. There it is. Might have been a long, flat, endless cart, but it was a true one, what Arthur said, yes. So now, what is the score? Goodness me, there's only one in it as ever there is these days. 3-4, 4-3. Frank Muir's team has won. We shall have another stagger through the bone orchards of semantics next time. Until then, goodbye from Arthur Lowe. Barry Foster. Henrietta Tavistock. Nina. Patrick Campbell. Frank Muir. Goodbye. A slight reverse, a slight change. This is Call My Bluff, featuring the father of the panel game, Frank Muir.
All of it. Good evening. Yes, go on. In keeping with the policy of the management, we are to continually bring you new faces. We have two newcomers to the game tonight, starting with an absolutely delicious actress from the Brothers, now in Cowardly Custard at the Bristol Old Vic, Gabrielle Drake. And our second is one of those actors who are totally incapable of giving other than a marvellous performance. From It Ain't Our Fault, Mum, and from Last of the Summer Wine, Michael Bates.
And that great Irish tenor, Patrick Campbell.
Thank you. Good evening. My team tonight are all tough journalists. And you've never seen a tougher journalist than my first guest, assistant editor of the Daily Mirror, Miss Joyce Hopkirk. An absolutely thunderous burst of applause, my next guest, who is incomparably the finest journalist that ever lived. And he employs me. The editor of the Sunday Times, Harry Evans.
Slight note of hysteria there, Patrick, but quite understandable. Here comes ring-a-ding-ding, the first word, and it's Malamute. And as you remember, Frank Muir and his team will define Malamute 3 different ways. 2 of the definitions are false ones, 1 is true. The people on the left will try and pick that one out. So, Frank, what about the word?
A Malamute is a member of a race which inhabits the Mergai archipelago to the westwards of the southern end of Siam. Some of the race are short, squat, and robust, but not all, because most of them are very short, very squat, and very robust indeed.
Yes. Michael Bates, your turn.
A Malamute was attached to a sledge and followed by a postman. This was used up to about 1904 in the United States of America to drag, it's a kind of quadruped, an Eskimo dog that drags or used to drag up to 1904, the American mail through the vasty wastes, is that right, or the wasty vasts of Alaska.
You mean letters? You don't mean the American mail. I know what you mean.
Yes, yes, the American postage, indeed.
Quite so. Gabrielle Drake.
Well, a Malamute is the name given to a hand-painted cotton scarf made in Bengal in India. And I would advise you to look at this only through a pair of very dark glasses because it's painted in extremely vivid and crude colours.
Right. It's a painted kerchief. It's an Eskimo dog, I think you said, Michael, yes. And it's inhabitants of Siam, somewhat to the west, somewhat to the south as well. Patrick.
I happen just to have returned from the southern part of Siam. Undone. A little beach resort called Hua Hin. And all the people there were thin and exquisite and beautiful. Not a husky one to be seen from mine. That's his husky as well, which is also wrong. They're all mixed up there with dribbling very kind. We rather tend to believe in Gabrielle, but not just yet, because I think it's really a husky.
The dog-type creature. Yes, you spoke of that, didn't you, Michael? True or bluff?
Yes.
Now you have to own up. When people say where they've been or where they were born, they invariably get it wrong. Here's the exception that proves the rule. He got it right. It does indeed, Malamute does indeed mean nothing to do with Siam, but that kind of dog. Rantoon, and you're to speak again, Patrick.
Rantoon is a very, very coarse kind of American chewing tobacco. If you take the darker and dirtier underleaves that grow right about the base of the tobacco plant, and you scrape it and all that to it, and make it into a kind of plug, you'll be amazed to hear, owing to the low quality of Rantoon, in 1893, in the state of Arizona, it was retailing at 7 cents per half-pound plug.
Heavens to Betsy.
Harold Evans, your turn.
Rantoon was a very early form of tricycle in which the wheels at the front were very small, and the wheel at the front, single wheel, and there were 2 wheels at the back, making a tricycle. And it was the difference between these 2 sizes of wheels that got it its name, perhaps. But anyway, the thing is that it came into fashion when Mr. Gladstone was in his 50s. In fact, I think I have an etching in the attic at home of a rantoon in Hyde Park, which was at the time being ridden. The young ladies of the day used to go out on a rantoon to take the air. But of course, they had to be suitably chaperoned if they were going to do any rantooning. If Gabrielle would care to rantoon with me after the programme.
Yeah.
Steady.
It was all right when Mr. Gladstone was there, but not otherwise. Joyce, it's your turn.
Well, a rantoon is a desirable bit of driftwood. It's sort of jetsam, flotsam. It's got its name from the medieval oak ships, and about 40 years ago, the last piece was sighted off the Devon coast, actually. It's a very valuable piece of driftwood, rantoon, and even now it's supposed to be picked up by coast guards. You're supposed to tell them about it because it's, it's meant to have architectural interest. Rantoon.
Yes. It's a very choice piece of architectural driftwood that you must instantly tell the coast guard about. It's a lump of chewing tobacco that retailed at 7 cents the thing, and it's kind of a tricycle, something to do with Mr. Gladstone. Frank?
Patty getting in another plug. Whether it's chewing tobacco. It can't be the tricycle, I don't think, because it would be the coincidence of the year if Mr. Evans happened to have a steel engraving of it, and it was a true definition. Whether it's driftwood. Driftwood is impossible, so it could possibly be it. Let's try driftwood.
You think that?
Flash the
now,
front
Joyce
page.
Hopkirk. To a bluff, Joyce. Come on. Looks pretty well pleased with herself. Yeah. Who gave the true definition of that word? Rantoon. Lowe, where it comes. Yes. It's a tricycle. It was a tricycle. A rantoon was a tricycle. 2-0, we come to Symbol. Michael Bates.
Yes, Symbol was an army-issue heliograph that was used. Heliograph, by the way, a piece of a mirror.
You know what it is, don't bother on
it. I thought, there was somebody in the north that didn't know. Anyway, it was a heliograph used by the soldiers in the Afghan and Zulu wars to send messages across open spaces, you see, by reflecting the rays of the sun. And it got its name from somebody called Mr. Sim and Mr. Ball. And the famous army expression was, they used to say, send it by symbol. Perfectly simple.
Yes. Well-known army expression is that. Gabrielle, what do you tell us?
Symbol is a most delicious thing. It's a homemade American donut made from fresh dough, simmered in oil and butter. And unlike one of your factory donuts, you don't have to use a microscope, even a magnifying glass, to see the jam in it, because there's great dollops of it, provided there isn't a sugar shortage.
Or jam shortage.
Or a jam shortage, yes.
Yes. Frank, tell us.
A symbol was a very particular kind of twit. He, at sort of fairgrounds and goose fairs and things like that, so short of an odd groat was he, that he offered himself to have things like eggs and old dogs and round hard wooden balls chucked at him. I suppose you might say he was a kind of male a sort of Uncle Sally.
Yeah, well, there you are. It's a type of heliograph. It's sort of male Aunt Sally, Uncle Sally, and it's pretty genuine type donut. Harold?
Well, I've great respect for the military presence here in Michael tonight, but I feel like saying symbol to him, sir, because he doesn't look to me like a man who can give a passing imitation of a Zulu or a Zulu word. And I flirted momentarily there with the twit in the middle. the symbol in the middle. I've just come back from the United States. I've never seen or heard of anything in the United States which is remotely described by Gabrielle, but she has such a lovely look on her face. I say that she is the symbol.
Well, now, she did say that it was a kind of a donut with a nice hole and plenty of jam, all that kind of thing. True or bluff, was it, or just, you know? Well aimed. Patrick, when the game was 3-0 before, you used to say it was rigged. What do you say now?
It's still rigged.
Ah, there's an honest man. There aren't many about. It's a donut, as she said, and as he said. Stentral is our next word. Harold Evans will tell you about it.
Stentral is a raised platform which runs fore and aft in a galley. And you know what a galley is in a ship. And in fact, if you've ever seen any of those films with men in the galleys rowing like hell and somebody lashing them, the slave master walks up and down this stentral and whispering kind words of encouragement to the slaves, and at 4 o'clock in the afternoon it's, serving the tea or whatever may be required. But he always does it from this raised platform called the stentral.
Well, sounds as though you're describing the way you treat your employee there, Mr. Campbell.
Precisely.
But there, before we come to him, let's hear what Joyce Hopkirk has to say.
Well, a stentral, it's an architectural term, actually, used to describe the foundations of a building, usually a Gothic building. The stone is set at a 45-degree angle, and it's a support stone. It's called a stentral. They're not always made of stone, actually. In Margam Abbey, for instance, in Wales, they're made of wood, but that's what a stentral is.
So, it might well be Patrick.
A stentral, the last of whom became extinct about 1600. A stentral, until he got extinct, was a tenant in Martingale Forest, Northumberland. Westmoreland, I beg your pardon, not Northumberland, Westmoreland. For a second there, we were nearly in error. As a condition of the stentral's tenancy, and we had to help the lord of the manor to hunt deer, because beginning by passing around the stirrup cup, and then after the lord of the manor had some of that and fallen off his horse, putting him back on his horse again, and after he fallen off the other side, putting him back on yet again. And then getting on with the deer hunt. A fearful job being a stentral. That's why it died out pretty well. They couldn't get the name anymore.
Well, it's a sort of tenant. There aren't many about in Westmoreland, I think you said anymore, but there were ones.
Yes, not
Westmoreland. It's part of a buttress architectural thing, and it's a kind of a platform from which people get or got beaten when they're anchored to the oars. Michael Bates.
Well, I was extremely impressed with Harold's very lucid description of mutiny on the stentrals, I should say. But I don't think it is anything to do with the ship. And I also very much enjoyed the chap falling off his horse with too much stirrup cup, or getting onto it. But I don't think that Patrick has got the right meaning. No, I think it is this architectural stone that Joyce has described.
She did, didn't she? Let her tell us now.
No.
Oh, no. No. Nothing whatever to do with that. I'm sure you're as panting eager as I am to know what the true definition was. Here it comes. See? All he said was true. Stentral is part of a gangway, and the chap walked up and down and did what he had to do. Still think it's crooked, Patrick. 4-0. Oh, goodness me. Milge. Well, that's the way I'd pronounce it if I had to, which God forbid. Gabrielle.
Well, now, milge is really no more or less than a poultice. It's a piece of flannel dipped in hot water, wrung out, and then put onto the sore spot, whatever that might happen to be. If my memory serves me right, I think it was Lord Chesterfield who once said, and I quote, "My foot is now mummified in a monstrous milge fortified with bran and mustard."
He never.
Yeah. They were always saying that on this sort of programme, weren't they? Frank?
I sort of lost confidence. Play something else. Where you go out of the room, don't come back. It's milge is railwayman's slang for a substance which, man-made substance, which should be called Chesterton's compound. It's a mixture of black paint and tar used for daubing on carriage roofs to stop them leaking.
Plough ahead, old hand, you've nearly finished.
I could say that it might have been invented by Mr. Chesterton, but it might have been invented, of course, by a Mrs. One doesn't know.
Milge.
Mrs. Chesterton.
Oh, Mr. Chesterton.
Yeah. Right, well, Michael.
Yes. Milge, yes, is a Percy thrower type word, meaning to dig round the roots of a tree or a shrub. And I think you will find that in the springtime, very keen gardeners will be milging round the roots of Lucy Cramphorn and Sam Macready and those kind of roses, plants.
Right. Well, it's a sort of a poultice. It's to sort of dig around the roots of things, and it's a compound you rubbed not on your chest but on the top of railway carriages. Joyce, Hopkirk, your turn.
Ah, well.
Oh, well.
Michael, I'm sorry to say that I think your mulching isn't milging. I really don't believe you. You've got the... As a gardener, I think I would have heard of milge by now. A keen gardening reader, anyway. Gabrielle, well, I was very tempted to say in the middle of your Chesterton little piece of verse that it was bilge, not milge. So, although Frank sounds preposterous, it's so awful that it must be true.
You think you'll have that compound that they were forever smearing over railway carriages. Frank, was that a tease? Afraid so. Well, if it's crooked, it's not as crooked as all that. Who gave the true definition of this interesting... Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Yes. Root with a spade round the roots. It's known as milge. Now we have the word croppy. Yeah, it's your turn, Joyce.
Croppy. Well, if there are any keen fishermen amongst you tonight, you'll know that a croppy is a freshwater fish. It's a sort of species of bass, a green bass, actually. But the thing is, you can't fish it in these waters. You would have to take your rod and your line across to the depths of Lake Minnetonka in America. That's where the croppy lurks.
Hardly worth it for green label bass.
Patrick, what do you say? What do you tell us?
A croppy, you might be amazed to hear, is an Australian sheep shearer. Now, let me explain that in greater detail.
Indeed, explain it, doesn't it?
It's an Australian with a pair of shears.
And a sheep.
Who shears sheep. Takes the wool off sheep, shears them. It's a popular name for sheep shearing, Australians. In Queensland, although, of course, the name spreads over the rest of Australia, sheep shearing croppies.
Yes. Harold, it's your turn.
A croppy is, in the Scots vernacular, a sailmaker's thimble. Only it's not a thimble which you wear over your finger in the ordinary way. This is a metal disc. Well, I did a button before I came here tonight, and I wore a thimble in the ordinary way. You may wear it differently. But this kind of... it doesn't fit over your finger, this croppie. It's a metal disc embedded in a leather strap. And the disc fits into the ball of the thumb, and so you can push through the stiff canvas with your croppie.
Right, it's a sailmaker's thimble, it seems. Kind of a fish, got to go a long way for it, and an Australian sheep shearer. Gabrielle, choose away.
Well, now, let me see. I don't believe it's your freshwater fish. I know nothing about fishing, but I don't think it is bass. And the sailmaker's thimble, well, I am impressed by that. It was a very good description. But I'm not going to go for that. No, I'm going to go for the simple answer. I think it's the Australian sheep shearer.
Of which, or of whom, I should say. Goodness me, Patrick spoke.
It isn't an Australian sheep
shearer.
No.
Strangely enough, it isn't for once an Australian sheep shearer. Who gave the true? Who gave the true?
God, he said.
No.
Yes. The true definition was the fish of which Joyce spoke so affectingly, even. Now, I wonder if we've got time for a quickie. You have to be jolly quick. Let's have another word. Silcot, Frank.
Stuff you put on raw canvas before applying paint.
That'll do. Michael?
A cotton material made to look like silk.
Good. Gabrielle?
Well, you've heard of the song, What Do They Do with a Drunken Sailor?
Yes.
Leave him in the silcot till he's sober. It's a safety net for sailors.
Safety net for sailors. Well, it's a safety net for sailors. They've got to have one. It's a primer that you use on canvas, and it's mock silk. Patrick? Dive instantly.
Whoever said it was a silk, the thing you use a primer on canvas was correct. That was old Muir, wasn't it?
Up to a...
No, correct!
True one, if you please. May we know the true one? Oh, we have to. There it is. It's mock silk. It's mock silk is what it is. And there, the score standing at 5-2. Perfectly clear. Patrick Campbell and Company has won. Why don't we have another trip to the crypt next week? Until then, goodbye from Michael Bates, Harold Evans, Gabrielle Drake, Joyce Hopkirk, Frank Muir, Patrick Campbell, and goodbye. Hello, this is called My Bluff, as you know, a polite way of telling fibs under the instruction of Patrick Campbell.
Good evening. And once again, my team of victorious newshawks come back in search of yet another victory. But my first newshawk's more of a news dove, really. She's one of the assistant editors of the Daily Mirror, lovely Joyce Hopkirk. And the other one is the most unforgettable man I've ever met. He's the editor of the Irish Times, the Sunday Times, Harry Evans.
Well, you've heard of the Gainsborough lady. Why not meet the Gainsborough gentleman? That is to say, Frank Muir.
Brilliant. I, again, pluck from the television series The Brothers and Cowardly Custard at the Bristol Old Vic, Gabrielle Drake. And from the plains of India in It Ain't Half Hot Mum, and the dales of Yorkshire in The Last of the Summer Wine, Michael Bates.
Splendid. Now we are free to proceed ringing this bell, all that's required to produce Tough Tough. And let me remind you, I think it's Patrick Campbell, yes indeed, who's going to define Tough Tough, he and his team, 3 different ways. 2 of the definitions will be cods or false ones, 1 will be true, and that's the one that Frank Muir and company will try and pick out. What about Tough Tough, Patrick?
Good. Tough Tough is a rather boring name of a deadly boring bush. Scientific name...
Shepherd's Bush.
I'm liable to begin again. The scientific name is called Gidea salata, little boring bush that grows in New Zealand. It's got one rather exciting thing about it. It's got little boring mud-brown coloured berries, but it's poisonous. But only a little bit poisonous.
Wake up out there. Oh, Harold, your turn.
Tough Tough is a trade name for a form of floor covering that first hit the shops in 1912. And my mother, as I recall, once bought some Tough Tough. It's a curious thing with a kind of wool on top and bonded to an undermatting of waxed canvas. And this gave Tough Tough the appearance of a kind of hairy linoleum.
Yeah, just what you want about the house. Joyce Hopkirk, your turn.
Tough Tough. Well, you've heard of chuff chuff for engines, trains. No. Tough Tough is the onomatopoeic word they used in 1900 to describe the soft purr of an engine, something like the Dion Bouton. Now, of course, we say vroom vroom for a Lamborghini, but it used to be Tough Tough.
So there you have the situation. Let me repeat it for you. It's a kind of carpet, hairy floor covering, New Zealand shrub, bit poisonous, not much, and a combustion, the noise made by a combustion engine, I suppose. Frank, your turn.
Well, this is quite clear, isn't it? I mean, there's no problem here at all, as we have had some weeks. The trouble is, which is it? I have a feeling that a trade name for hirsute lino early in this century wouldn't be in the dictionary. I just have that feeling, that's all. Mind you, neither would the boring New Zealand bush or trains that go tough, tough instead of, or Dion Boutons that go tough. They didn't go tough, tough. They weren't steam, madam, were they?
You're in deep trouble, lad, aren't you?
I will be if you flash your card and it's a bluff. Could you flash it?
What are you choosing? What did he say? Oh, he said about the New Zealand shrub. Well, it was certainly the dullest. Is it the truest?
Not a word!
It's often a good bet that the dull one's a true one, but, you know, sometimes not. Who gave the true one? Let's hear. Ah, can you believe it?
Well done, my darling. Great.
It's what the in crowd used to refer to the internal combustion as. How's your tough? Oh, well, I don't know. Shuff, shoe, show, shoe. Frank.
Shuff.
Off.
Is a breed of Icelandic dog. It's got a brown, hairy coat, which is sometimes trimmed poodle fashion. It's none of your arriviste, it's none of your new arrival type blended dog. It's very ancient, because it's mentioned, as I have no need to remind you, in the third act of Macbeth. Shuff. Shuff. Shuff.
Thank you.
Yes. Well, at least it's a change from Rabbi Burns, isn't it? Michael Bates, your turn.
Yes. Shuff. It is a Lincolnshire dialect word for a chilblain. And as a matter of fact, funny enough, I haven't been to Lincolnshire, but I've heard of Lincolnshire poacher, but there is an old Lincolnshire remedy for these. If you suffer from shuffs or suffer from shuffs, is to put, I think it's castor oil, belladonna, and something else, and you besmear each shuff 3 times a day.
Sooner have the chilblains. Gabrielle.
Well, a shuff is actually no more or less than a bump in the road. It's a sort of ridge that goes across the road, like that. Incidentally, before the days of air-cushioned tyres, you might like to know, a shuff used to be called a thank you, Ma'am. Because when you went over it, when the carriage wheels went over it, you involuntarily nodded your head as if you were saying, thank you, Ma'am. There you are.
That's rather nice. Rather nice. Well, it's that kind of... It's a ridge across the road. You bump over. It's a sort of Icelandic dog, and it's a Lincolnshire chilblain. Patrick.
Well, anything that happens on this programme that occurs in Lincolnshire is always untrue.
Unless it be Norfolk.
New Zealand, too.
West Norfolk, Northumberland, all those areas, nothing ever goes on there that's true and honest and that. It's always a lie. People in Iceland find they don't have time to trim dogs. They're much too cold, much too hard-working. And so I think, oh, God, do I? That I think it's a ridge of the... I don't think so. I think it's really a...
You're wobbling on the wire, Patrick.
I think it's a chilblain.
The chilblain. Now, that was you, Michael, wasn't it? Own up. Right. True or bluff? Who knows? Nothing whatever to do with that. We now need to know who gave the true definition of the word. Shuff, show, shove.
Oh, no!
Icelandic dog is what it is, and then you get something that sounds, well, it sounds more or less the same. Choosh, choush. Harold.
Choush is a breed of Afghan pony. I haven't seen one myself, so I have to take the description I'm given of a choush, which is an Afghan pony which is exceptionally long-jointed but has very slender pasterns, P-A-S-T-E-R-N-S. That's part of around the knee, I understand. And it's a combination, the long joint and the pastern, which accounts for the goat-like agility with which the choosh is to be seen dancing about among the rocks of the Khyber Pass.
Right. Joyce.
A shoosh, not a shoush, a shoosh, is a headscarf, but it's the size of a tablecloth because it's made for an elephant. It's used on ceremonial occasions, and the point comes down here over the trunk with a long tassel like that, and that's called a shoosh. A shoosh.
Yes. All right. Now it's you, Patrick.
With shoosh, we find ourselves back yet again in Turkish territory. We've been here before in this programme.
That is certainly the truth.
With burghers and all that, but Shoosh is a kind of minor diplomat attached to the Sultan, a kind of emissary. When the Sultan wants to buy something, he sends the Shoosh over to feel out the ground and say, like, 5 for me behind the head, that kind of thing. A kind of an emissary of a Sultan.
Right, well, it's what fashionable elephants wear. It's a hat on the front of their heads. It's an Afghan pony, and it's that Turkish ambassador again. He's been here before. He'll be here again. Michael, choose away.
Well, I was most interested in Harold's lucid exposition of shoosh, sort of knees-up mother shoosh, with this long-jointed pastern and so on, but I'm afraid I don't believe that was it. Patrick's is very interesting, this Turkish diplomat. where they, of course, they say keep shush in Turkey, not keep mum. Diplomatic phrase. No, I think that, as I've had a little experience of India, that it is a headscarf for an elephant. Joyce.
Well, Joyce, you did say it. Now she must tell us, was it the headscarf of the elephant? True or bluff?
Ooh.
Oh, no. Nothing to do with that. True one, please, if you will. Ode up.
You want to keep shush there a bit.
Ah. Just for once, it was a real Turkish ambassador. Yes. Now we have Broderick, do we not? And Michael Bates, your turn.
Yes. This thing of Broderick, yes. I can never say the word. It's a philatelist term for a naughty kind of forgery. Stamp forgery, and that is they used to kind of smear and smudge stamps to make them look more valuable than they really were. And as a matter of fact, I think you'll be very interested to hear this, but there was a Mr. Broderick who actually did this.
There usually is.
Obviously, he got caught, and that is the explanation.
Well, it's Mr. Broderick and his nasty stamp. We go to Gabrielle.
A Broderick is a North Country woman's implement. It's a needle for making rugs with. It's longer and thicker than a darning needle. That's really what it is. And it also used to be used, in fact, by witch finders. They used to prod suspected witches with this Broderick in order to make their victims confess that they were, in fact, witches. Very painful it must have been, too.
Well, and now, Frank, what do you say?
It's one of the facts of life that all soldiers have not the physique of John Wayne or Anthony Steele. And around about 1902, there was a sort of derisory nickname for soldiers who were very sort of weak and ramshackle. They were called Brodericks. And this didn't happen. Nothing happens by chance. There's a reason for it. And the reason is that the then Secretary of State for War was the Right Honourable W. St. J. Broderick, MP, later died.
No. Yes, as so many of us will or do. Well, it's a kind of low... It's not a very good soldier, is it, really? It's not that, or rather, it might well be that. It's that and a rug maker's needle from where, I can't remember, and it's a forged stamp, much blotched or worn out. Harold Evans.
I'm very attracted to the master forger there. But on the other hand, I can't see anybody doing that with a stamp and spending a lot of time doing it. I really hesitate somewhat between Gabrielle and Frank. I wish they would stop bluffing me over there. I come from the North Country, and I've heard of a bear bodkin, and I could associate a bear bodkin or something like that with Gabrielle.
Really?
But I never heard my mother use the term bodkin or Broderick, and so I have to come back to the definition I can't even remember, which is something to do with a man who died of some obscure bodkin.
It was Mr. Broderick who said that feeble soldiers should go in the army or
yes,
thereabouts.
I think
I'll give you a chance to change your mind.
No, I'm going to stick to that. I'm going to stick to the general.
That was Frank. Own up. Was it a feeble soldier?
Oh.
Yeah. That's another joke, really, in this...
Guessed by a man who didn't even hear the definition.
Well, it shows you the level at which this game takes place, doesn't it, really? 3-1. It does mean a soldier, and he was called a Broderick. And then we have this word quarian, or quarian, or whatever. Joyce.
Quarian. A four-sided candle, and it was used in the Middle Ages to light up the dark, gloomy corners. And it was called a quarian after a measure of light. It was generally acknowledged to be 1 candle watt. I mean, that was before electricity or whatever they called watts in those days. 1 candle power, no more, no less. That was a quarian, to light up dark, gloomy corners.
OK, well, I think it's you next, Patrick.
Mary had a little lamb. Its fleece was white as snow.
Can't you think of a Bluff?
And everywhere that Mary went, the lamb was sure to go. And there was a little poem written as recently as 1851 by an American lady called Mrs. Sarah Hale, and it's a quarian, which is a verse of 4 lines.
Neat as you please.
Well.
Harry Evans.
A quarian was an early Christian who did not conform. And he didn't conform because he always insisted on celebrating Easter on the day of the Jewish Passover, even if it wasn't a Sunday, which is a fantastic piece of nonconformism for the time. The Druids were in uproar.
Well, apparently it's 4 lines.
And,
oh, you want to say some more?
No, I'm not finished.
You don't want to pause, pausing for applause,
No, I'm sorry, but it was
suppose.
condemned in AD 325 by the high priests of Calabria.
Quite rightly.
I don't think that particularly improved it, but there you are. It's a 4-line stanza, like what Patrick said and all that. It's a square candle. It's an early nonconformist, as Harold said. Gabrielle, choose, if you will.
Well, much as I like Harold's uproarious Druids, I don't really go for them too much, I don't think. I am very tempted by Joyce's 4-sided candle. But I think I'm going to plump for Patrick's Mrs. Sarah Hale's quarian, her verse.
I am glad someone's plumped.
Plump for it, yeah.
Patrick, was that true or bluff?
Mary didn't have a little lamb at all.
Game's not rigged, is it, Frank? You never say that. But now let's have the true. Let's have the true definition, shall we? Got to be there somewhere.
There we are.
It always is.
It was your choice.
Said that it was there.
You nagged her. It won't be it's not the first time. It won't be the last, I dare say, that he's nagged someone out of it. Aquarian, the 4-sided candle. Corvée is something else, and now Gabrielle Drake to define it.
Well, now, if you are a potter, the word corvée will strike terror into your soul, because it is, in fact, the conditions. What happens when you overheat your kiln? You put your pot in, and it comes out all sort of bleh, like that, and with the paint all run down the sides, and you really have a lump of nothing. And if you are known as a corvian, you've really had it in the pottery trade.
Yes. Right, Frank.
You get a lot of these on cathedrals. Notre Dame smothered in them.
Yes.
There's ones at Lichfield Cathedral who might have dampened Dr. Johnson as a lad. They're little gargoyles, water spouts.
You don't care to enlarge. Why
Well, a gargoyle is a sculpted thing.
A short history.
Water
Yes.
out over the edges of the walls and onto
And
the
Dr.
people
Johnson, yes.
Yeah. Why
Next,
don't I
please.
keep my mouth shut? Michael, your turn.
Yes. A corvée was an engine of war. And I think its last reported use, rhymingly enough, I think was 1584. And it was a huge piece of wood that they used to lower over the battlements with great hooks on it, and they would hook up the opposing forces like a shoal of fish and drag them onto the battlements. Very painful. Corvées.
You'd have to be pretty handy with that. It's an engine of war, it's a misshapen pot, and it's a gargoyle. Joyce Hopkirk.
He's counting the truths, Paddy.
We're dissenting.
Kind of women's intuition. You let your intuition, whatever it is, run.
Oh dear, what a responsibility. Overheated.
We might get
Kiln.
another one in. You never know if you hurry up a little.
Right.
Just a little.
Overheated kiln. No. Curvy cathedrals.
Nope.
Nope. Michael.
Nope.
Is it true or bluff?
The engine, well, thank you for taking my part, don't have much to do, but still, here you go. Well, thank you for doing my bit, Joyce. We can have another word now. It actually, Corby does mean engine of war, would you believe it? Yeah. 5-1, Frank. Oh, dear, oh, dear. Yepson. Patrick.
A Yepson is a pregnant goat.
Thank you.
It's a nanny goat that's been to the altar. Or not, as the case may be. But there, the similarity between Yepsons and the human race comes to an end, because the Yepsons have theirs with the speed of lightning, comparatively speaking, compared with human beings. Because 80 days after being to the altar, they have a little kid.
Fairly quickly, Harry, if you please.
A Yepson is a manual measure as much as you can hold in those two hands. So when Frank Muir goes boy scouting, he gets a Yepson full of water and throws it in his eyes. And when you wait for the fruit machine to deliver, you put your hands under and say, "Oh, Lord, 1 Yepson full."
Joyce?
A Yepson is an old word for high noon. Hence, the Yepson wind is the most vicious. Yepson is high noon.
Yepson wind. Yeah, oh, yes. Well, that's old-fashioned pronunciation, but the wind at noonday, but noonday particularly, a goat, but particularly a pregnant one, and it's the measure you get with holding your two hands together. Frank?
I'll tell you what it is. It's not holding your hands together. So whether it's Patrick's pregnant goat, it's a good one, isn't it? It must be high noon, mustn't it, because it's so absurd.
That was Joyce's. True or bluff, Joyce? Tell us, will you? Ka-chow, take that. Let's have the true one. We must have the true one before we call a halt.
Hold your
There
hands.
you are. Two-handed measure is what Yepson means. 6-1. My goodness me, how swingingly Patrick Campbell and his team have won. We shall have more wild tales from the Oxford English Dictionary next time. Until then, goodbye from Harold Evans.
Good night.
Michael Bates. Joyce Hopkirk. Gabrielle Drake. Patrick Campbell.
Good night.
Frank Muir.
Good night.
And goodbye.